Have you ever been told that if you just smile in the mirror and think happy thoughts, the universe will magically hand you success? It is one of the most dangerous lies of our modern era. We are drowning in an ocean of toxic positivity and cheap manifestation mantras. They tell you to just visualize your desires. They tell you to ignore the pain and force a positive attitude. But let us face the brutal, uncomfortable truth. When your bank account is draining, when your career feels like a suffocating dead end, and when you are staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. consumed by anxiety, a fake smile will not save you. Welcome to Stoic Chisel. Today, we are going to tear down the fragile illusion of modern positive thinking. We are going to replace it with a biological and philosophical weapon forged by the ancients. Take a hard look at the reality. Most of us wake up to every single morning. You are trapped in a modern matrix of endless demands. You step out of bed, and the very first thing you do is reach for your phone. You are instantly hit with a tidal wave of notifications. There are emails demanding your immediate, undivided attention. There are perfectly curated lives on social media designed specifically to trigger your fear of missing out. The pressure to perform, to produce, and to pretend everything is fine is absolutely crushing. And what happens when you inevitably stumble under this immense weight? What happens when you miss a critical deadline, fail at a task, or simply run out of energy? Listen very closely to the voice inside your head in that exact moment of failure. It is never a forgiving voice. It is a ruthless, unforgiving critic. It whispers that you are an imposter. It tells you that you are constantly messing things up, that you are falling behind, and that you will never measure up to the competition. This internal dialogue is not just annoying. It is actively tearing your confidence apart from the inside out. You are self-sabotaging your own existence, surrendering your power to a voice you never consciously chose to listen to. If you are ready to stop being a passive victim of your own mind, hit the subscribe button right now. Join a community of individuals who refuse to settle for comforting lies and are ready to do the hard work of mental mastery. Like this video and share it with someone who desperately needs a wake-up call today. Because what we are about to unpack will fundamentally destroy the way you currently view your own mind. Most people walk through life believing that thoughts are just harmless, invisible clouds floating through the ether. They assume that a negative thought is just a temporary bad mood that will eventually fade away without consequence. But modern science and ancient Stoic philosophy completely disagree with this naive assumption. Every single time you tell yourself that you are not good enough, those words do not just vanish into thin air. They are not just abstract concepts or fleeting emotions. Your thoughts are not invisible. They have physical weight and biological consequences. What if I told you that your thoughts are literally sculpting the physical architecture of your brain right at this very second? What if the words you quietly whisper to yourself in the dark are actively carving out neural highways that will either forge an unbreakable mind or guarantee your ultimate failure? To understand how your thoughts are actively sculpting your physical brain, we must pass past philosophy for a moment and dive straight into the hard, unforgiving mechanics of human biology. Your brain is not a static organ sitting motionless inside your skull. It is a highly dynamic, constantly shifting battleground of electricity and chemistry. Every single time you have a thought, your brain fires a specific sequence of neurons. These neurons communicate with each other across tiny gaps called synapses. When a thought is repeated, the connection between those specific neurons becomes stronger, faster, and more efficient. In neuroscience, there is a fundamental rule that states neurons that fire together, wire together. Imagine your mind is a dense, untamed jungle. The very first time you think a negative thought, like telling yourself you are incompetent after a mistake, it is like walking through that thick jungle once. You leave a faint trail in the dirt, barely noticeable. But what happens when you repeat that exact same thought every single day for a year? What happens when that becomes your default reaction to every minor setback? You are no longer leaving a faint trail. You have paved a massive, high-speed asphalt highway of self-doubt right through the center of your brain. Because the human brain is an absolute master of energy efficiency, it will always choose the path of least resistance. It will automatically send your electrical signals down that wide, paved highway of negativity, simply because it is easier than forging a new path. This is exactly why feeling miserable, anxious, and inadequate feels so natural to you. It is not because you are inherently broken or destined for failure. It is simply because you have spent years physically training your brain to be highly efficient at producing misery. But here is where the brutal truth becomes incredibly empowering. If you have the power to engineer a highway of destruction, you also possess the exact same biological machinery to construct a fortress of resilience. This phenomenon is known in the scientific community as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the undeniable proof that your brain is plastic, meaning it is malleable, changeable, and entirely subject to your command. You are not a victim of your genetic hardwiring. You are the architect of it. When you consciously intercept a toxic thought and force yourself to reframe it, you are doing something profound. You are actively stopping traffic on that negative highway. You are forcing your brain to carve a brand new path through the overgrown jungle. The first time you do this, it will feel exhausting, unnatural, and fake. That resistance you feel is not a sign that positive self-talk does not work. That resistance is the literal physical friction of your brain trying to fire a brand new sequence of neurons. But as you enforce this new discipline day after day, the old highway of doubt begins to crumble from neglect. The new pathway of confidence, clarity, and rational response becomes the dominant, paved road. This cognitive reprogramming does not just change your mood. It violently alters your brain's chemical cocktail. When you choose an empowering thought over a destructive one, you trigger the release of specific neurotransmitters. You command your brain to release dopamine and serotonin. These are not just mystical happy chemicals designed to make you smile. They are biological catalysts that enhance focus, decrease physical stress, and prime your nervous system to endure intense hardship without breaking. You are literally injecting your own mind with the biological fuel required to conquer adversity. You are using your conscious mind to hack your biological hardware. This requires a level of agonizing, repetitive discipline that most people are simply too lazy to cultivate. Every time you catch a destructive thought, you must swing a chisel against solid rock. You are performing open brain surgery on yourself, without a scalpel, using nothing but the sheer force of your own will. You now understand the modern neurological science behind cognitive reprogramming. But how did the ancient Stoics, men who lived and died thousands of years before the invention of the MRI machine, manage to perfectly master this exact biological system using nothing but their own minds? The ancient Stoics did not need neuroimaging or modern psychology to understand that a corrupted mind destroys a man from the inside out. They instinctively knew that the words you speak to yourself are the very foundation of your reality. Take Epictetus, for example, a man who was born into the brutal reality of Roman slavery. He endured physical abuse, systemic oppression, and the constant threat of violence. Yet he emerged as one of the most brilliant and free-thinking philosophers in human history. How did a slave achieve total mental liberation? He did it by understanding a fundamental truth about human existence. He stated that men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. This single sentence is the ultimate Stoic blade. It is a razor-sharp weapon designed to slice through the toxic narrative your brain automatically generates. Let us take a hard look at how you currently process adversity in your modern life. When you are passed over for a promotion, when your business venture collapses, or when you face a bitter romantic rejection, what is the immediate script running through your head? You instinctively ask yourself pathetic, self-defeating questions. You ask, why does this always happen to me? You ask, what is wrong with me? You tell yourself that you are fundamentally broken, that you are a permanent failure, and that you will never recover from this humiliation. This is the victim mentality in its purest, most toxic form. By asking these disempowering questions, you are willingly handing over the keys to your mental fortress, to an external event you cannot control. You are begging your own brain to find evidence of your inadequacy, and your brain will happily provide it. Stoicism demands that you take those keys back immediately. It requires you to completely overhaul your internal dialogue through the grueling practice of cognitive reframing. You must absolutely refuse to react to the world like a helpless leaf blown around by the wind. Instead of letting your automatic biological highway dictate your emotional spiral, you must deploy empowering questions. Empowering questions have absolutely nothing to do with faking happiness or pretending that a terrible situation is actually wonderful. They are a brutal, objective interrogation of your own circumstances. When the market crashes and your life savings bleed out, you do not sit in a corner and ask why life is so incredibly unfair. You ask, what exact, painful lesson is this massive financial loss forcing me to learn right now? When a long-term relationship shatters and you are left sitting in an empty apartment, you do not ask why you are completely unlovable. You ask, how can I use this intense, suffocating isolation to rebuild my character, my discipline, and my ultimate independence? When you are drowning in debt and exhausted from working a job you despise, you do not ask why the system is rigged against you. You ask, what specific, aggressive actions must I take today to slowly buy back my freedom? Do you see the massive shift in psychological power? A victim asks why a tragedy is happening to them, paralyzing themselves with self-pity. A Stoic asks how they can use the tragedy as raw material to forge their own supreme strength. You are no longer a passive recipient of bad luck or unfair circumstances. You transform into an active predator, hunting for the strategic advantage hidden deeply inside every single obstacle. This is exactly what the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But to truly weaponize your mind, you must go beyond just analyzing the present moment of crisis. You must master the ancient, powerful practice of future self-talk. Most people talk to themselves based entirely on their past failures, their current insecurities, and their historical weaknesses. They define their entire identity by their most embarrassing and weakest moments. Future self-talk violently flips this entire paradigm upside down. It forces you to communicate with yourself as the person you are striving to become, not the person you are currently ashamed of being. If you struggle with crippling social anxiety, you do not label yourself as an anxious, awkward person. You command yourself by stating that you are a person who remains grounded, observant, and perfectly calm in chaotic environments. If you are prone to explosive anger and emotional outbursts, you do not excuse it by saying that you just have a bad temper. You declare to yourself that you are a man of extreme discipline who dictates his responses instead of surrendering to his base impulses. You are actively projecting an ideal, Stoic version of yourself into the current reality. You are acting as if you already possess the virtues you desperately need to survive. This is not delusion, and it is not a manifestation trick. This is deliberate, calculated psychological engineering. By repeatedly speaking to yourself from a position of future strength, you give your neurological system a brand new blueprint to follow. You are forcing your brain to physically build that new highway of confidence we talked about earlier. You begin to systematically bridge the massive gap between your current, flawed self and your ultimate, unshakable potential. Every single time you use an empowering question, you break a heavy chain of victimhood. Every single time you engage in future self-talk, you lay a solid brick in the foundation of an unbreakable character. This is the daily, unglamorous, grinding work of the Stoic discipline. It requires you to stand armed guard at the door of your own mind every single waking second of the day. You must brutally audit every single thought that tries to enter your consciousness. If a thought makes you weak, you immediately discard it. If a thought makes you a victim, you mercilessly destroy it. You replace it with a narrative of extreme ownership, radical responsibility, and unyielding fortitude. This level of absolute mental control sounds incredibly powerful in theory. It is very easy to practice cognitive reframing when you are sitting in a comfortable room, sipping your morning coffee, and watching a YouTube video. It is remarkably easy to be a philosopher when your life is relatively peaceful and predictable. But the true, terrifying test of your mental architecture does not happen in times of peace. What happens when a real, devastating tragedy strikes, without a single moment of warning? What happens when you lose someone you desperately love? Or when a sudden medical diagnosis shatters your entire vision of the future? How do you possibly maintain this rational, cold control when everything you hold dear is violently ripped away, and all reason collapses into pure, animalistic panic? To survive the sudden, brutal collapse of your reality, you must abandon the modern obsession with positive visualization. When you only picture a perfect future filled with endless success and happiness, you are setting a psychological trap for yourself. You are conditioning your mind to expect a frictionless existence that simply does not exist. When life inevitably strikes you with unexpected cruelty, your fragile, overly optimistic worldview shatters into a million pieces. The ancient Stoics understood that hoping for the best without preparing for the worst is a recipe for absolute despair. They engineered a psychological defense mechanism so powerful that it can immunize your mind against the shock of catastrophe. This technique is known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. It is the deliberate, calculated practice of visualizing the absolute worst-case scenarios before they ever happen. It requires you to sit in silence and vividly imagine losing everything you hold dear. You visualize your business going bankrupt. You visualize being betrayed by your closest ally. You visualize waking up to a devastating medical diagnosis. Modern self-help gurus will tell you that this practice is toxic, pessimistic, and will attract negative energy into your life. They are completely wrong. Premeditatio Malorum is not about morbid obsession or generating unnecessary anxiety. It is a rigorous fire drill for your nervous system. If you have already lived through the total destruction of your life in your mind 100 times, the actual event loses its element of surprise. You have already rehearsed your emotional response. You have already aligned your brain chemistry to handle the intense pressure without short-circuiting into blind panic. Neurologically, when you vividly visualize a crisis and mentally practice remaining calm, your brain cannot tell the difference between the simulation and reality. You are actively building neural pathways of resilience in a safe, controlled environment. When the disaster finally hits, your brain does not flood your system with paralyzing cortisol. It recognizes the scenario, activates the pre-built pathways, and immediately shifts into a state of cold, rational problem solving. But anticipating the worst is only the first half of the Stoic armor. The second half is a concept so radically defiant that most modern minds cannot even comprehend it. It is the practice of Amor Fati, the love of fate. Amor Fati goes beyond mere acceptance or grim resignation. It is not about simply enduring the terrible things that happen to you. It is the active, aggressive embrace of every single obstacle, pain, and humiliation as a necessary part of your evolution. When you are fired from your job, you do not just accept it and move on. You embrace it as the exact catalyst you needed to finally start your own enterprise. When someone breaks your heart, you do not wallow in a state of victimhood. You love the event because it exposed a fatal flaw in your judgment and gave you the clarity to rebuild your standards. This is the ultimate form of emotional alignment. You are forcing your emotions to strictly support your ultimate growth, rather than disrupt it. You are acknowledging reality in its rawest, most unforgiving form without a single drop of emotional bias. You stop demanding that the universe conform to your personal desires. You look at the cold, hard facts of your situation, and you extract the hidden advantage. This brutal acceptance immediately eliminates the suffering caused by wishing things were different. It shifts all of your mental energy away from the things you cannot control and hyper-focuses it entirely on the few things you can. This brings us to the true, untainted, Stoic definition of gratitude. Modern society has reduced gratitude to a cute aesthetic. People write in beautifully bound journals about how thankful they are for their morning coffee or the sunny weather. That is a fragile, conditional form of gratitude that instantly evaporates the second life gets difficult. Stoic gratitude is forged in absolute darkness. It is the ability to stand in the smoking ruins of your own failure and feel profound thankfulness for the crucible that is testing your spirit. You are grateful for the crushing pressure because you know it is the only force capable of turning carbon into a diamond. You are thankful for your enemies because they expose your weaknesses and force you to become sharper. You are grateful for the intense pain because it proves you are still alive and capable of enduring more than you ever thought possible. This extreme level of gratitude makes you virtually untouchable. If you can find deep, genuine value in the very things designed to destroy you, nothing in this world can ever defeat you. You have effectively hacked the human experience. You have taken the raw, chaotic suffering of life and converted it into high-octane fuel for your own mental supremacy. But understanding this theoretical framework is absolutely useless if it remains just a concept in your head. Philosophy is not an academic pursuit meant to make you sound intelligent at dinner parties. It is a martial art for the mind, and reading about how to throw a punch will never save you in a real fight. How do you take these profound biological and philosophical concepts and hammer them into permanent Unbreakable habits. How do you guarantee that you do not just feel motivated today, but actually transform your fundamental character for the rest of your life? To transform these profound biological and philosophical concepts into permanent, unbreakable habits, you must embrace the unglamorous forge of daily discipline. The ancient Stoics understood that virtue is not a theoretical concept you read about in a comfortable chair. It is a brutal, demanding martial art for the mind that must be practiced aggressively every single day. You do not become physically dominant by going to the gym once a month. You will never build a resilient mind by occasionally listening to a philosophical video when you feel sad. True transformation requires a concept the Greeks called ascesis. Ascesis is the deliberate, rigorous, and unrelenting training of your own character. It is the absolute refusal to rely on something as fragile as motivation. Motivation is a cheap, unreliable emotion that will abandon you the exact moment things get painful. Discipline is the cold, calculated execution of your habits regardless of how exhausted or defeated you feel. Think of your mind as a muscle that has completely atrophied from years of modern comfort and checked victimhood. If you want to cultivate a dominant, unshakable outlook, you must force yourself to do the daily repetitions. Every single time you catch yourself spiraling into a negative narrative, you must immediately halt the process. You must deliberately replace that toxic thought with an empowering question or a statement of future strength. At first, this process will feel mechanical, exhausting, and incredibly unnatural. That is exactly how it is supposed to feel. You are actively overriding decades of weak biological programming. But with relentless consistency, a profound compound effect begins to take place. Small, seemingly insignificant choices made repeatedly over time result in massive biological and psychological shifts. You are carving new, powerful rivers through solid rock. Let us talk about how your daily speech acts as the ultimate architect of this resilience. Words are not just sounds. They are the raw materials of your future actions. If your immediate reaction to a severe setback is to declare that you cannot handle it, you are directly ordering your brain to shut down and accept defeat. But if you force yourself to declare that this is merely a test, and you have overcome worse, you instantly engage the problem-solving centers of your mind. You must practice this assertive, commanding speech until it becomes your absolute, default biological setting. It is not about delusion or avoiding the truth. It is about framing every single hardship as a temporary obstacle that is entirely within your power to navigate and conquer. Over time, this disciplined speech will radically transform the way you walk through the world. Crisis situations that used to break you will barely even register on your emotional radar. You must also ruthlessly audit the environment you place yourself in to protect this new foundation. You cannot forge a mind of steel if you spend hours every day consuming digital trash. You cannot cultivate profound resilience if you surround yourself with people who constantly complain and refuse to take responsibility. Remove the junk food from your mental diet immediately. Curate your reality to strictly support the virtues you are bleeding to build. The goal of this Stoic habit formation is not to help you achieve some hollow, external success. It is to fundamentally rebuild the very core of your character from the ground up. You now possess the biological mechanics and the ancient philosophical blueprints to reshape your reality. The tools have been laid out in front of you. But understanding the theory is completely meaningless if you lack the courage to apply it. We have reached the end of the lesson, but this is exactly where your true test begins. Dưới đây là biểu bổn. Đóng gói phân cực. Polarizing CTA in aftertaste. Đoạn kết này được thiết kế để đẩy cảm xúc của khán giả lên mức cao nhất, ép họ phải đối mặt với tại ngày mai và đưa ra một sự lựa chọn tàn nhẫn dưới phần bình luận nhằm tối ưu hóa thuật toán tương tác engagement của YouTube. The ancient Stoics did not leave us these tools so we could feel intellectual or superior. They left them so we could survive the crushing weight of existence. Tomorrow morning, you are going to wake up and step right back into the modern matrix. Your phone is going to ring. Your boss is going to demand your energy. Your own mind is going to try and drag you back down that comfortable, paved highway of self-doubt. In that exact fraction of a second, the philosophy stops being a concept and becomes a war. You have a brutal choice to make. You can surrender to the chaos, let your automatic thoughts dictate your misery, and remain a passive victim of your circumstances. Or you can pick up the chisel. You can step into the forge of discipline, rewrite your biological programming, and claim absolute sovereignty over your mind. There is no middle ground, so I am asking you right now, and I want you to declare it to the world. Are you going to be the architect of your own reality, or will you remain a permanent slave to your own weakness? Pick your side. Type architect or slave in the comments below. If you are ready to do the hard work and forge an unbreakable character, subscribe to Stoic Chisel right now. Do not just watch this video and go back to sleep. Wake up.